Well, I didn't want to be in a band. It was kind of an accident, and I don't know that I really joined the band so much as we just all kind of walked into the same room at the same time. And I remember the inspiration was a friend of ours by the name of Gary Allen, who was this flamboyant, joyful black gay man who headlined or who fronted a band called The Neighbors' Voices. It was a really cool kind of progressive French rock band living in Hollywood, and they had a show, and they wanted us to open for them with me singing. Basically, this band at the time called What Is This, with Flea, Hillel, and Jack Irons on drums. But just instead of having the normal singer sing, well, let's let Anthony have a crack at fronting the band. And so we did it as kind of a spoof. And we wrote a song, and it was a really kind of fun song to play. And we went and we played one song opening for this band, and we never really discussed it afterwards. It felt so good that we knew that we had a band at that point, and we just kept kind of marching forward from that night to this night.
I didn't necessarily always want to be in a rock and roll band, but I always wanted to play music, that's for sure. Well, I wanted to play music from the age of around 10 years old. Yeah, I was pretty set on playing music. Even though I never really thought in the long term, and I still don't really think in the long term. It's always just sort of one day sets up the next, and whatever happens, happens. But I always wanted to play music. It always seemed like the best idea to me.
We were committed, convicted, passionate, totally consumed with the Red Hot Chili Peppers as, these young guys in Hollywood. It was meant more than anything to us, really. It was the full package. It was our gang of friends, and our love for music, our never-ending love for music, and the perfect kind of creative outlet, and this very exciting time in the place we lived, musically, culturally, artistically. It was a very positive and kind of blossoming era.
The only one that I'm not really happy with is the first one. I feel like we didn't really capture the energy of who we were at that time. In particular, we had Hillel Slovak and Jack Irons playing drums with us before we made the first record, and they left just before we made the first record. I know that we could have kept them to make the first record, and we would have really had the initial burst that we had and captured it in a good recording studio, which was one of the most exciting and meaningful parts of our careers for sure. And I think that was a mistake, nothing against Cliff and Jack Sherman. But it just, when we started the band, it was a real spontaneous, explosive event. And to have captured that on the first record would have been a good thing. And I think the first record, we were kind of intimidated by the studio, and it could have been a really important record.
But I think for us, every record was different. Every record was, we had learned something from the last record, and we went somewhere. We didn't keep making the same record over and over. We definitely went places, and part of that, was because we were listening to a lot of music and wanted to experiment with new things. But we had some pretty interesting producers, one after the other, for those first three records. So we made progress. The world paid no mind, but that was okay. That was meant to be.
I was just dealing with his death. The band wasn't really a concern for me, one way or the other. And the band just sort of took its course that it took. Yeah, when he died, it was just my best friend died.
It didn't stop us, and it shouldn't have stopped us, in my opinion. It definitely hurt us and changed us, and we were never the same from that day forward, emotionally or musically or anything. But I think in the minds and hearts of Flea and myself, it was never a consideration that our work was done with this band. We have a lot of tragedies and a lot of strange derailments along the way, and none of them ever gave cause to want to quit. But we did find a way to sort of make it happen, even though it wasn't the record it could have or should have been. It would have been a much better record with Hillel and Jack Irons, but we did find one of the coolest drummers in the world, Cliff Martinez, to come and play with us on a couple of records.
It was a completely different band with a different feeling, but at the same time, it was so much of the momentum that we'd had from the other records. And I know for myself, I can't really speak for Anthony, but just for myself, I felt like I had really found my voice as a rock musician, and the type of music that I was composing, and it definitely, what I had done up to that point had a lot to do with the way that record was.
To me, it's very much a first record for a band. It sounds like a band's first record, Mother's Milk. It doesn't sound like their fourth record, because we're still getting to know each other and still finding out ways of working with each other. And it sounds very, sophomoric in a way. We just didn't know who the hell we were at that point. We had this kind of teenage prodigy on guitar, who was just, bursting with enthusiasm and very energizing for the band, and it was a great beginning, because I developed a new relationship with a person that I could write songs with, which is always a very kind of temperamental thing for someone like myself who doesn't really play piano or guitar, to find someone that I can get inside of and have them be that instrument for me when I'm writing, and vice versa. So that was the beginning of a very fruitful relationship as songwriters, and Chad was just this very sort of mysterious Midwestern powerhouse, who never grew up listening to eccentric music. Really, he was pretty on the straight rock and roll path. And something about this new chemistry we found was more appealing to the masses, I think. He sort of gave us that every man's ear. Blood Sugar Sex Magic was a huge leap forward in terms of togetherness and just tapping into something much more spacey and interesting than the more kind of earthly sounds of Mother's Milk.
By the time we did Blood Sugar, I grew a lot. We all grew a lot. And we had been together and we were more comfortable with each other by that time. We had toured Mother's Milk to death, and we got in, we just wrote and jammed and came up with stuff every day.
That was a blow. That was a real kick to the gonads. But again, it wasn't, it was a kick to the gonads. It wasn't a decapitation of the head. Flea and I knew that we would go on and do something. Even if it wasn't, we kind of had to go back to square one again with a new chemistry. A very important thing to this band is chemistry and the way we all affect each other, and we all provide a necessary ingredient, and we're missing a big piece now. And, we went through the kind of horrible period of auditioning guitar players, which I can't recommend as a great way to find a guitar player. You really have to just kind of dive in the river and pray that the universe delivers you somebody that you can play with, because auditions, Broadway style auditions, just, it doesn't work out that great. It's comical if you're in a good mood, but if you're in a bad mood, it's torture. So, that never really worked. And then sort of through word of mouth, we got together with Dave Navarro and kept it together. We kept it together, and it's a period that's not looked at as our finest moment. But the further away from that period I get, the kind of more fond I am of the record we ended up making. It was a very troubled and turbulent making of a record in some ways. And in some ways we had fun, and there are songs on there that I'm proud of.
I've been in touch with him the whole time. I mean, the whole time that he wasn't in the band, I had been friends with him. Not as consistently and as intimately as we had been in the past, but I maintained a friendship with him, and there was never any bad feelings between us. There was always respect and love between us. Things weren't working out with Dave Navarro, and we parted ways with him, and it just so happened at that same time that John had stopped doing drugs, and I thought he might be interested in being in the band again. And I went over to his house and asked him, and he started crying and said yes. We both started crying.
That was weird. Unexpected. Last thing in the world that I would have ever expected. It was as close to someone coming back from the grave and re-entering your life as I think it could ever get. And that's not to say he was dead. He might have been sort of dormant in a way. But the likelihood of him re-entering this band and re-entering my life as a friend was really the last thing in the world. And In a way, it gives me faith in the power of thought and the power of prayer and just those kind of vibrations that you send out into the universe. Because I definitely, as much as I had disdain for him for a while, I definitely prayed for him a lot. It was like, I'm not even sure what I believe in, but whatever it is, I'm going to pray just in case, because this guy's hurting and I don't want him to die. And it wasn't because I didn't want him to die for my sake. I just kind of wanted him to have a second chance. He was rusty. His energy was beautiful, but his guitar playing was rusty. He hadn't played for a long time. But I wasn't really surprised. I kind of had a lot of optimism about that. The first time we played, it was good, and it was right, and it fit. And we all had the feeling like, okay, we can write music together again.
I mean, when John and I sit down and jam, we come up with stuff in a minute. We're just sort of the nature of who we are, our curiosity as musicians, and our just the way that we fit together.
We had a lot of work to do, and we were just kind of really, putting on the blue collars and punching the time clock and going into the garage every day, and time passed quickly, almost without enough time to reflect in the moment of what was happening, and we just went straight into the studio and recorded, and it was a free-flowing moment for us.
In terms of the essence of what By the Way is, it's just a continued growth and momentum of what we were doing with Californication. The thing that I think is a lot different with By the Way, aesthetically, is really the way that John wanted to record. I mean, he made a real conscious decision to, instead of just play one live guitar track, which had maybe two, he decided to layer many guitars on each song. And as well, he wanted to play keyboards, synthesizers on songs, which he did, and he really wanted to he really got into studying doo-wop groups and girl pop groups of the 60s and stuff, and the Beach Boys and background vocal harmony, so he really wanted to do a lot of that. And he did it, and that aesthetically gives the songs a different feeling, different sheen.
I want to let it go where it wants to go. I want to just get together and do what we do, which is improvise and jam and be together and show up in rehearsal spaces on sunny days and just play music and see where it goes. That's the way I like to look at it, because every time we do that, every time we get together to maybe rehearse for a show or whatever, we usually end up just playing for the sake of playing, and it always sounds like songs and new music and things worthy of recording and working on and arranging. So I'm more interested to see where it will go than trying to force it to go somewhere.
Not that I don't think about the future. I think about what I'm going to be doing with my life. But in terms of creativity, I don't think. I mean, I just try to keep getting better. Yeah, I mean, whatever I do musically, I just want to be better at it. I just want to continue to focus and to learn and to grow and to not take it for granted, and not, yeah. I mean, it could be that I'll never sell another popular record again, but I always want to keep growing as a musician, that's important to me. Otherwise, it would be boring, and the magic of what it is for me that makes me want to get up and go on these ridiculously long tours and, get run down and fly every day and sit in hotels is because it's all because of the interest in music, which comes from that magical, mysterious part. And it's only magical and mysterious as long as I'm reaching for something that I don't understand. Otherwise, it becomes rote, it becomes boring, it just becomes going through the motions, and that holds no interest for me. I don't need the money. I have more money than I need, as it is. There's no end to my thirst for the mystery of the beauty that God puts on